Hello Tubesters, it's Gav and welcome to another one of my videos. Today we're looking at the Airfix Polish Lancer, from the Collector's series. I'm looking at the box there, memory problems. 54mm, I can't remember which, I'll obviously get the correct sequence of build numbers on the video, but whatever it is, that's what we're looking at. I've painted the horse. I've only done the tack that's on the horse, that's the leather harness work. I've just put it a base black at the moment, and I dry fitted the shabriquet on the top just to see where I needed to fully do more painting, if that makes sense. So that the top, isn't the saddle part of the horse? I'm trying to learn all the horsey terminologies and I'm not really good at it. You know what my memory's like. But I've gone over that, but not obviously you're not going to see it, but I couldn't just leave it primer grey. Just, it wouldn't have sat well with me. So yeah, he's done. I'm withholding one highlight. I've got a golden brown highlight to do. It might seem a bit, is the word counterintuitive? I'm not sure. But you'll see, you've probably seen a thumbnail of the horse. It's a dark chestnut horse. But you can work that golden brown in to make a nice final highlight in places, just on obviously the highest points. But I wanted to see where the shadow areas were and everything when the figure's actually all on, so I'll just go around with that right at the end, and if I fancy doing some more on the highlights of the horse. The forelocks, I believe it's called. Yes, forelocks to you, Gav, I can hear. You make your own jokes up as you go along out there, I know. The forelocks, I believe, or is that rowing? I'm not sure, but forelocks of the horse is where the hooves are in that anyway. I will do maybe a slightly more weathered look when he's all dressed into the scenery, the base, something like that. Right, let's go down to the bench, take a look. I've also done a fair bit to the base, well, as fair bit as Gav does with all his projects on the go at one time, but I'll show you that as well at the end. And I for once I managed to plonk him down into the clay and everything, so he's not going to be sitting floating above it all, hopefully. Anyway, I'm rambling, let's go down and take a look at our horse. Thanks for joining me at the bench, Tubesters. Here's our horse. As you can see, the girth strap, I think it's called, which I believe I have seen them leather on some horses, and others I've seen them at the different time periods, and some I see them as, I believe this one's going to be, which would be fabric with the leather on the top. There is another strap to go on the top of this, so again that's why it's been left off, but I will paint that soon. I've obviously left the ornament, whatever you call it, the jingly jangly bit here, that's not been painted. Neither is the bit. Yes, snigger at the teeth, Basil Bean. I don't care. He's just a bit unfortunate like that, you know. As I say, this was 1815. The remounts were hard to come by. So if he had dodgy choppers, that's that they took him anyway. So there we go. Here's our horse with his dodgy choppers. They need to take a file to him. I think they actually literally filed him with a big, like, engineer's file, I believe. So yeah, what I've done is built up the textures. There was some texture on the horse already that was already painted in, but I've added it by stippling as I normally would do, then putting heavy glazes of paint on top of that to suppress it slightly, but still leave a texture to it, if that makes sense. I'm not so much a bigger fan of I mean, it doesn't help. Next time I do one, I need to make sure I smooth all this out, because when you can't really see it from a display point of view, but up under the camera you can see all the humps and bumps left behind by my bad workmanship. But it's not paint so much, I think it's bits of stuff that just I've left on the horse. But yeah, the top bit obviously, as I say, is fairly just about painted. There's a couple of marks where I've already dry fitted the chevrolet on. Let's get back. I didn't want to give him some of the dark chestnuts I'd seen have got a fairly light tail, and I thought I'd go for that for a change rather than the classic black brown type of look. Hooves might be slightly light, and they are under the camera and reflecting off this lighter surface here. That's my excuse. I've done a lot of these hooves. Sometimes I put them on and sometimes I don't, but they have like a pinkiness come through. You'll see them when you look at close-up of horses' hooves. Yes, I look at horses' hooves to try and get the right thing. But when you're doing it as a piece of art, if that makes sense, it doesn't always translate. So I didn't know whether to keep them on, but I'm going to on this one. A lot of the times I'll leave them out, even if I've seen them on there. I don't often pick a one horse. I'll pick usually a couple of horses to work the colours in. As long as I keep it within that colour range of a horse, I'm okay with that. I don't think these, as I've been calling them, feathers, as we would do on a spaniel, but not much of a cross reference there really. But I deliberately kept extra at the back there because obviously you have the feathers loose as well. So yeah, it probably is a bit overkill, but it doesn't look that bad. And that's it really. Trying to remember actually I wrote the colours down. Hang on a second. Right, for once I wrote the colours down. Not necessarily the paint brands, which won't help anybody, but hey. Yeah, so I've used whole red. That's Hull with my accent. Whole red. And that's mixed with, I believe I've mixed that with a chocolate brown. But any dark brownish would do really. It's just as a base coat. And then I put whole red stippling on. Then cavalry brown stippling on the lighter areas, so raised areas. Then parasite brown stippling. And then I did heavy, you could call it a wash or a heavy glaze, depending on how you want to use it, of a shadow flesh. So the whole red was AK, because they do vary slightly. The cavalry brown was Vallejo. I'm having to remember. I'm surprised I can remember this. Parasite brown was Vallejo again. Shadow flesh was, it's a very nice reddy flesh, and that was from AK as well. And as I say, there will be a golden brown of either AK, they're much the same colour, AK and Vallejo. I've got them both by accident. And I will probably do a golden brown to some of the very highest points just to give a bit more of a look to it. Now I don't matte varnish these display figures, so I can keep the sheen on the horse, because as you do your glazing and that, you can quite often mop over the horse and it'll bring up a sheen. Sometimes that's works in your favour, as in here. In a War Games figure I still do the same thing as you see my Napoleonic 28mm cavalry. However, I then spray obviously 2 coats of matte varnish over the top, which completely loses the sheen, which is fine. The sheen is just a bright byproduct of mopping your brush over the surface with a fairly wet, almost water, if that makes sense. So you're almost polishing the figure. So there we go, that's the horse. I might dull down parts of the muzzle as well yet and do another pink and a bit more shadow area in the nose area. I don't want to highlight the teeth anymore. Enough said on that subject. Put a dot of white on the eye as a reflection. It gives it a glossy look. Yeah, that's our guy so far. So he is ready for the Chabriquet to be painted sometime this week. Been doing this on the side. This was a bit of a suck it and see type of thing. This frame is actually a top off an old spice rack. My wife came up with the idea. Thank you very much, Mrs. B. Yeah, some blue foam as per the wall, and then just Das clay It was a bit hard. I think it was already going off, as in the packet, because it was a bit hard to work this, but we got there. I've left it purposefully all over the shop because I intend to hopefully maybe green it all the way down to the base on the sides. I did look at buying some of that matting that you can cut up, but it's like anywhere from 10 to 15 quid. I don't want the one on the brown paper. I've got some of that, and that's pretty rubbish for what I need it for. It was more the longer stuff, because my flock box isn't particularly great at getting the longer bits to stand up. It's more on the 20, like on a 28mm gaming figure, or display figure, whatever you want to call it, but 28mm it works fine, but anything bigger it doesn't tend to want to touch it. But I don't want to spend any more money than I have already, so I just think, no, I'm just going to do my own flock on top, and it'll be what it'll be. The idea originally was to have like a wall from an estate, because this is before Waterloo itself, and they're scouting ahead, looking for the Prussians. So I wanted a bit of an estate wall. It's not great. I maybe should have chamfered these capping stones at the top, but I broke a bit off at the bottom on purpose. And it reminded me of a wall that we've got round well, it's a hotel now, but it used to be some rich person's house, and the wall around the outside is still more or less intact, going back to the 1850s or 60s, 70s, I don't know. And one of they don't use the gates, obviously. They're just there as to get in and out, but there's no gates on. But the sand, though it's not sandstone, but the sandstones, the stone, dressed stone, whatever you want to call it, is pushed up, but there was some big gaps in it. Yeah, that could be age, but it was then, whether it's been bolted into the thing or what, I'm not sure. Sometimes they use lead to tie in, but I thought, yeah, that looks actually quite good. Now the idea is the soldiers, whether it's the French or the Prussians, the Allied British, whoever had been there has robbed the gate for firewood, which would have happened. So it's just left these lugs that the gate would have hung on, and I attached some wood there. I don't know if I have seen them on old buildings. Obviously not. The wood probably hasn't been there since the 1800s, but I have seen wood on these type of things as well. So I left that on there, and I might put. I don't want to put a tree as such. I don't want anything to particularly take away from the figure, but I'll put maybe as big as this cocktail stick, something growing there. We'll see what we can make of it. It was just something not to just stick it on a square bit of grass, really. I did think of doing a broken up gate with bits still off there. The only problem with that is they would have just robbed it away. If it's wood, you weren't going to leave some behind. The only reason they haven't robbed this wood is because it's all bolted through to the stone behind, and it was too much like hard work. But yeah, the rest has gone for firewood type thing. So yeah, there we go. That's our base, and obviously I've made well, as I say, where it's wet, I've got him there, so I've got him in the position I want to. So that's it. That's our what they call it. Oh, words fail me. Yeah, I know, not for the first time. Yeah, that's our progress. That was a word. I knew it was in there somewhere. That's a progress for this build so far. As I say, we've got the let's get out the box while we're here. This is an old box, and so I'm thinking we might as well do it in order. So got this guy to do next, and on that girth strap I showed you, there will be another plasticard, styrene sheet, whatever you call it, strap that goes. It'll have to just go to there, I presume, but it would normally obviously be attached to this, and that goes round that girth strap. And this would be black as well on a private or a trooper's horse. Officers high-end officers might have them red or different colours. especially like hussars and stuff. But yeah, that's our next. We've got to, don't forget, we've got to paint underneath as well. I've seen them with like tarred black or rubbered black. I can't remember which. That's on the Prussians. I keep calling them Prussians. Prussians that I'm painting in those ABs. They would have had that in black. These guys could have had it as the ticking striped or Hessian. I'm going to probably go with Hessian on this one. So yeah, that's the next instalment. So next time you see him, we'll have that attached to the horse, painted and attached, and then it'll just be the figure. And I have decided I might try and do it before I start painting the figure, but I will try and make a lance, I think, out of wire rather than well, not wire, but you know what I mean, brass rod or whatever, rather than that plastic one, because it does droop, and I've seen other people's that's obviously drooped even more over time. So anyway, thank you very much for stopping by and taking a look. Hope all's going well with you. I've got lots of different things coming up figure wise. We've got the three old West figures, which are fairly well advanced. I've got the clients Napoleonic cavalry in for the epic scale. Have a look at those Inniskillings cavalry, and I've got some British also epic Warlord Games plastic guys to show as well. I've painted a whole, well, 1.5 hole Vikings 28mm on the side to do a Victrix sprue look at with 2 painted figures. And I'm going back to some paints. I want to paint some Vietnam figures. I was listening to Richard Clark, is it, off Too Fat Lardy's podcast, and he was interviewing guys, can't remember the name now, from Empress Miniatures, and they were talking about different stuff, and he was talking about, you know, he likes the Vietnam range, and I thought, you know, I've got 3 primed Vietnam figures in there ready to go for that collection. So yeah, I thought, do some Vietnam, why not? Lexington USS type CV2. I always say CV2 because obviously unfortunately they had to scuttle her, and then there was another Lexington later on in the war. So I always say CV2 if people wonder why I always put that on. So I'll do a Lexington update probably towards the end of the week. You'll be glad to know, all 2 of you, that's about the level of interest, that the Dragonfly even, for Vietnam, I run some CA glue as a filler on there, and it seems to work really well. So we'll be doing a build on under camera update tomorrow. I know you can't wait, can you? Put that one in your diaries. So that'll be coming up, because I'd like to get that one done and move on to the Starfighter. So yeah, that'll be an update tomorrow. I'm actually doing build under camera. That was only delayed. Wife had a week off work, really noisy in the house when she's here because TV goes up and down and bump up and downstairs, and then calling me for something, you know, and then playing with the pop. So it's just not worth trying to do anything like that, because you just can't, you know, you can't guarantee that somebody's voice or something's going to break into the recording. I've primed my little block of wood. So now, tomorrow, before or after the build, probably after, I need to paint that block of wood with my airbrush, and then I can mount my flat figure on it. So that's all getting pushed. It's one of those things where, as it always happens with me, everything's half done, and then suddenly everything falls into place, and you end up with, say, 3 reveal videos in 1 week. So we'll see how that goes. So look after yourselves. Thanks for stopping by once again. It's always appreciated, and we will catch each other very soon on another video.